So Mark Zuckerberg over at Meta Facebook has decided to end their DEI program. So that's the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is an effort to snuggle up closer to Trump and Musk as they're set to take office. I want to go over as much as I possibly can to explain what's going on. I'll share my opinion on this stuff. And I'll be honest with you, very few people in USA ever have honest discussions about these topics. And it's always good to try our best to address this in a meaningful way. So first, this is the headlines. We'll go through some of these. And Meta terminates its DI programs days before Trump inauguration, right? I think it's 10 days away, something like that. Meta kills diversity programs, claiming DI has become too charged. Basically, right? Trump doesn't like it, and you're trying to gain favor with the current administration. So I get that. Mark Zuckerberg praises masculine corporate energy after Meta's DEI policy reversal. He gave this like really long interview on the Joe Rogan podcast. I watched a little bit of it. You don't need to watch it, I'll tell you. but part of it was talking about how the workplace can be aggressive, and sometimes that's a good thing. Maybe women might be uncomfortable inside a workplace, talking about sort of that tech bro stuff. And Zuckerberg, he even talked about sometimes, he feels the need to, you got to have where masculine is good and guys beating on each other is a good thing. It's a long conversation and it appeals to that kind of audience. I don't think, Zuckerberg and his, how can I say, in his discussion is like trying to be mean-spirited, this kind of stuff. But I'll just say he's definitely, trying to snuggle up to the Trump people. And there is some pushback at his companies, which, because of the policy decisions that are made, will end up hurting a lot of people. So I'm just being honest with you on that kind of stuff. So what's really going on in Zuckerberg's heart, who knows? I think he's just chasing the money, to be really frank. That's just my point of view on that. So what do these people really believe? Who knows, right? But I do know he does want money and more power for his companies. You also have these kind of opinion pieces that have been coming out just the last couple of hours. Trump, Musk, and Zuckerberg have declared war on facts and truth. The pushback must start now. And so this is the two things that have been canceled. One is they canceled their fact checkers over there, and also their DEI programs. So you kind of see where this is going. He's basically turning Facebook and Instagram into like Musk platform, Twitter, or X, if you want to call it. You also have this: Meta staffers reportedly furious after Mark Zuckerberg's hate speech update allows allegations of mental illness based on gender or sexual orientation. So I think you're going to see a lot more. What's the word to say it? I mean, you could, if you want to say hate speech, I guess you could say that. You could say Russian trolls or bots. Just a lot more negative content targeting certain groups on their platform, and it's unfortunate. I don't control the platform, right? I don't actually know. Say on YouTube, if there's that many creators out there, or YouTubers out there, basically that put the kind of content that's on X, or how often that stuff gets taken down. I don't go looking for that stuff, so I don't know. But I guess people at Meta Facebook, and I was reading through some comments of employees there, are upset about it, which is, I understand it, completely understand. Unfortunately, that's the way our society is going, because again, Musk and Trump are in power. And they're going to argue free speech, right? And part of what's happening, and I'll show you guys an example, just one. They're blaming, this would be Charlie Kirk, he's a right-wing dude, blaming the forest fires on lesbians. Like, that's the kind of stuff that these people do. And so basically, when in doubt, it's always, someone from the LGBT community's fault, right? Anything bad that happens. And you'll see that kind of stuff on social media. So, I do agree that we do need to push back on this stuff and have some real conversations about any of these things. The problem is people aren't honest about it, because everyone has whatever assumptions going in, right? So if you assume that X group of people are always unqualified, then you just, doesn't matter what they say, what they do. You just don't think that set of people could ever be qualified at all. And you'll see that, for example, in that last election with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. If anyone who watched the debate just watched it, it was pretty obvious one person prepared more than the other. It's pretty obvious in this situation. Kamala it was obvious she did her homework and Trump didn't. It broke down to that. But for some people, they could never accept that a woman could be prepared or be capable, right? Some people, they just can't get that in their mind. And when you go off of that assumption, then suddenly you're just looking for, any excuses to say, oh, it's, that group of person's fault. Let me give you an example of sexism. It's an uncomfortable topic because when you deal with any kind of racism, sexism stuff, you're dealing with long held beliefs that people have. And it's kind of like trying to convince someone that God doesn't exist, or trying to convince someone that God does exist, right? How do you convince people of their long held beliefs on top of that if they have no actual experience with different groups of people? And then you're also talking about they have economic interests into saying, oh, X group of people are bad and only my group of people are good. It becomes very, very difficult to address these kind of things. And that's why I was saying it's a complicated issue, because money is involved, right? And also emotions and beliefs. On top of that, I just want to talk about, say, what does Zuckerberg believe? My personal opinion is probably he's just after money. I think that's what it boils down to. What does he really believe in? Masculinity, femininity? Who knows? You can ask him. Like, for example, TikTok, they may or may not get banned in the USA. And so from Zuckerberg's point of view, and even Musk, they probably want TikTok to be banned, right? So they're going to want to snuggle up to the Supreme Court, to Trump's, whatever, and try to get whatever ban on TikTok they possibly could, right? There's an economic incentive for that to be closer to the Trumps. Or something like this. Meta was trialing out eBay on their platform, right? Is Meta going to buy eBay, going to partner up, whatever? So in some countries, like, or I should say areas or unions, whatever you want to call it, the EU, right? In Europe, they're more strict about monopolies and antitrust stuff. So maybe that won't fly over there. But maybe if you snuggle up to the Trumps, then Meta can buy eBay, and then that'll become a whole new conglomerate in that way. And so that would be, again, why Zuckerberg, getting rid of DEI and getting rid of fact checkers is to kind of go, again, be buddy and snuggle up with Trump. Because remember, these kind of people don't care about truth or not. They just want to promote whatever propagandas. This is an interesting thing too, that people were mocking Zuckerberg when he gave the talk about getting rid of fact checking. He was wearing like a really expensive watch, $900,000, so it's just out of touch with regular people. And part of kind of what we're dealing with right now with social media is, how do we think about social media's place in society? And I'll give you some examples. You guys remember the whole COVID stuff, people spreading misinformation on medicine or healthcare things. And that's become very, very serious issues because it affects people's lives, like immediately and directly. Or another example, the Cybertruck bomber person, right? You guys know, was in front of the Trump Hotel in Vegas. I guess used ChatGPT to learn how to build an explosive device. So shouldn't there be safeguards in place? ChatGPT to like not let people do that. Now Musk would probably argue, hey, that's free speech. We can say whatever we want and stuff like that. But I'm just laughing because it's like there's so many situations to where you don't necessarily want like all information at all times available to all people. I'll put it that way. Be it adult content, dangerous content, stuff like that. What's going on also, which is even crazier, that's why I wanted to explore these sort of issues that's happening with social media, is if you're on Musk's platform and say you're a British MP, right, politician, he's literally paying you to tweet out whatever nonsense, and then he can promote your posts. So this just came out today. Elon Musk's Twitter is paying Nigel Farage, Reform UK MPs thousands of pounds every month, right? And just think about that. So is that legal? Is that not legal? Should every government around the world legislate some sort of new thing that be like, hey, you can't accept payment from Elon Musk through said platform. You should just you can be on said platform, but not necessarily be part of their payments program. And that's a very, very interesting question, because definitely, most governments around the world have laws about foreign money coming in to support their politicians or bribe their politicians, however you want to say it. And so this is like kind of this weird gray area there, right? I'm sure you guys get what I'm getting at here. So I think what's going on is I wanted to bring that like a bigger picture of not just the DEI stuff, not just the fact checking stuff, but understand like it's how do we think about social media as a whole, and how do we relate to each other? On top of that, I think companies are just looking for any excuse to fire people or to not, to close down any sort of hiring at all. So I don't think it's really about DI. I think it's really about money. So for example, JP Morgan, we talked about this in the prior video, they're going to call everyone to come back into the office and say, hey, you gotta come work, right? You gotta come in. And they know people aren't going to accept it. Some people aren't. And so they'll be able to fire people that way. There is a downturn in the market right now, the downturn in the economy. I'll give you another example. So Apple, this report just came out. This guy always has insider stuff on Apple. It's Min Chi Kua. You always hear about him. I think it's a he. I'm pretty sure it is. It may be a she. I'm not sure, but I think it's a he. Regardless, you guys can let me know. But they always leak out stuff on the on whatever Apple's doing, and they're saying, oh my god, Apple is probably gonna have declining iPhone sales there, right? So why am I mentioning this stuff? Is like, okay, so if companies aren't selling, so many products, their profits are going down. Companies find excuses to, fire people. When in doubt, right? There's a fire in LA. Oh, okay, we'll just blame trans people for all of our problems. Like it's more to it than that. Essentially, depending on how far to the right you want to go, you're just using certain groups of people as scapegoats, which is very, very dangerous. I want to make that really clear. And it is frustrating to see this play out live. I was hoping as society we move past these things, but I completely get it, right? When the money gets tight and people just, they have all this frustration, anger at the system, and essentially they feel like the system, doesn't work, everything's against me, and you just start looking to point fingers, and then you have these, your Zuckerbergs or your Trumps or your Musk giving you targets to point at. And I think it could get really ugly out there, just be honest with you, if it keeps veering in that direction. So I think the first thing that I would say in any of these conversations is whenever things aren't going, so well, say in your neck of the woods, in your situation, figure out ways to where you can rechannel, your frustration into positive ways. I'll just talk about my book here. It's called Positive Angle. That's what it's about. Sometimes people ask me what my book's about. It's about that. I had to deal with bad situations quite frequently in my life. And trust me, guys, I know how the racism game works. I really know. I'll just put it this way, regarding, hiring. Look at any sort of, news broadcast in USA, and I promise you won't find that many, if any, Asian male anchors or reporters, etc. It's just not something that they're interested in hiring. That's part of what I've learned in my career. Hiring is never fair, and it doesn't matter, which perspective you're looking at. And I'll give you a very simple example. Do you think you could rise to the very, very top of Walmart? It's just for example, I'm using Walmart because, as you probably know, it's the Walton family, right? You're not gonna be the top because the family owns it. So that right there inherently is unfair. It's the same way when you live here in Korea. The country's only owned by a few companies, the chaebol, right? So like Hyundai and LG, Samsung, etc. It's just a few powerful, rich families that control everything, and the USA is kind of moving in that direction. And so the way hiring generally works, this would be any major place, would be it goes to the kids of the rich people first, right? That'd be this whoever found the company, their grandkids, etc. Like Tyson Foods, for example, has I think it's like the grandchild or great grandchild of the founder, and he was the CFO and doing all sorts of crazy crap, like really crazy crap. He has like a drinking problem, and he one time was in his neighbor's bed, like fell asleep in his neighbor's, like, I don't know, crawled through the window or whatever. She called the police on him, and it's a white dude, so he's not going to get shot. But just imagine if he was not a white dude, right? And like some stranger that's not a white dude, like say, black or brown, just makes their way into their neighbor's bed, a female's house, and they call the police. Your chances, your life's in danger. I'm just being honest with you about that stuff. But people are gonna, no, because you're just wrong. You're just a hater. I'm telling you too, like how this stuff works. And so, one, say the CFO position at Tyson Food, he got it because he's the great grandson. Let's be honest, right? The guy, and he has like 2 DUIs now or something like that. And I think the board finally decided to kick him out. But that kind of stuff. So, when you understand the hiring is based on that, first, do you have family connections, right? After that, it's friends of said family connections. And then after that, maybe qualified people. And then after that, maybe there'll be whatever ways that people get in. I'll just say this, like, I've seen it enough times in my life to know that regardless if there's DI or not DEI, it's not going to change the fact that some people are going to be hired unfairly. But what does the quote fair mean, right? And like I said, no one will ever have this honest conversation with you. The reality of the world that really works is it's all about connection. I would say that it's the most important thing. And they always say it's who you know, not what you know. So I would definitely say, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be qualified. You should try to get the most skills that you possibly can, and make yourself better as best as you can. But just understand the world is stacked against you if you're not from a well-connected family. And anyone who's reached to the very top levels of society, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm just making random stuff up. A lot of the world is a political game, right? So, be it, say, in company situations, if they do have a DI program, they may not be an honest program. It just may not be, right? The way that it's handled, who's hired to run said thing, etc. But that doesn't mean that other places are more fair. It absolutely doesn't. I could say that all hiring practice, no matter DI, non-DI, is unfair. You're just hiring your friends no matter where you are. And I've seen it too many times, too many places, to think that otherwise. That's something that I've really prided myself on. But I live in a different world than most people. I completely understand. So my job for many years, for 10 years, as a professor. And what was my job? My job was to evaluate people's essays, tests, whatever, presentations, stuff like that. And I would do that, right, regardless of what someone looks like. Now, that is something that I've learned to do, just how to evaluate people's work. But I also understand that everyone's going to have certain biases, even with that. But the more open you are about, hey, I'm trying my best, I'm going to look past whatever someone looks like. If you recognize your own biases, you can do much better in this world, and you'll be able to see talent that maybe other people can't. And that's another thing. So I worked in film and TV, and part of what I used to do all the time is really good at spotting talent. Just it's something that I'm able to do, and I can look past what someone looks like, which some people can't. Some people can't. Some people, and it goes well beyond than how people think of diversity in USA. You can talk about nationality. You can talk about language and accents, right? These kind of things. So, for some people, if you have the wrong accent, right? I use the example of, because we've been talking about India for a long time. I have a lot of Indian friends, and they speak English perfectly fine, but their accent's going to be different than what, say, you might be used to as an American, right? Or British. There's different types of accents in the UK, and maybe you're only used to one type, but there's all kinds of accents over there, right? Or even accents in the USA. Some accents are considered more preferred than others. And if you don't have the right accent, say in the USA, some people may not think that you're as intelligent, but you may be perfectly intelligent. Just you have a different accent because you were born in a different part of the country. So, I can't cover every single, issue that every single person has, other than, like I said, most people aren't honest about this stuff, that hiring isn't fair, in any situation, right? But I will say this, the better companies tend to try to make it more fair, to try to look for the best people. And how do you define best? It remains to be seen. It's a complicated topic. I want to read some comments from our community, because I know you guys understand these things we're talking about. And it's fun to talk about this stuff in an honest way, because not enough people do. So for example, this is Sidoris, says here, it is sad that all over the world, the rich come to power, and not the smartest and most capable of realizing the aspirations of the people. Okay, and that's referring to, say, the Musks or the Trump, right? So rich come to power. So you guys can see it. Another person said here, and this is Scott. Scott says, an unelected immigrant billionaire takes away the benefits of hardworking and poor Americans. He must be a genius, right? And I think he's being sarcastic there. We also have this from Adrian. Adrian says, no one can claim that Musk is all that smart when he builds a factory with a high water demand at a location where water isn't in abundance. And that was on a shore we talked about in Texas, where they're basically going to take the water from the local community. And the idea of smart, though, it depends how you define smart. If you only define smart as Musk is, making as much money as humanly possible, yeah, it's smart to take money and, water from other people. it depends how you define smart, right? And so I think we're also wrestling with that stuff, as social media puts sort of people's personalities in the public, and things that normally would be behind closed doors, you can see it in open. Like it should be pretty obvious that Musk isn't as genius as he tries to portray himself to be. But some people still fall for this stuff. There's a comment coming in from Societas 2000. They say, keep your false, idiotic comments to yourself. That's regarding me. You don't know what you're talking about, referring to President Trump as a backstabber. Why can't we just be Christians and stop with the hate and negativity? If you don't have anything positive to say about a person, then please don't say it. Food for thought. So that was coming from Societas 2000. And yes, I make fun of them. I know it's funny. But I understand from this person's point of view, why can't everyone just be Christian? Wouldn't that just solve all of our problems, right? And you can obviously tell from this person's perspective, they probably haven't, seen the world that much, right? Or maybe they have, who knows? But regardless, they think there's only one true religion in the world and only one, true, I guess, president. And they don't even see Trump as a backstabber, which is even separate than being whether or not Christian or not Christian, because Trump is clearly a backstabber. Anyone who has their eyes open, but there's that. And this is stuff you have to deal with every day, learning to live in a multi-cultural society, multicultural world, right? Is people going to see things differently? A couple things I want to share with you guys, because sometimes people ask these kind of questions, who do I like and stuff like that. I'll just put it this way. I like all kinds of people. So I met Elizabeth Warren a couple of times. I'm totally fine with a woman being president and women in power. I have no problem with it. And in fact, I feel very sorry that she didn't get her chance. I was never a huge fan of Biden. I've said that several times on the channel. I thought she was easier, the better choice, but I get it. There's a lot of people out there that just prefer a dude. I totally get that. Now, I have no problem with voting for a dude. Back in 2016, I thought Bernie was clearly the better choice. But back then, there was really a strong push for Hillary. She's part of the machine, right? I get it, right? I'm not stupid. I just, I thought there was limited upside for Hillary. She was kind of a known, and that happens with some candidates. Like, it's just, people already know who you are. There's only so much you could surprise them. But she wasn't an awful candidate in the sense of like, I'll take her over Trump any day of the week. But, I thought at that time, I thought Bernie was the better candidate. But we can argue about that. Point being, I'm fine voting for a dude. It doesn't matter to me. I met Andrew Yang also. My big thing with Andrew Yang, we went to the same school, we're about the same age. So I like the dude personally. And I think he should have had a spot in the cabinet, not necessarily president that particular year, but they should have given him a spot in the cabinet. But again, no one's bending over backwards to invite Asian dudes to the party. That's just not going to happen. So I don't know. They just kind of threw him to the wayside, which I thought was a really big mistake. But I want to talk about also, I don't just look and think about people that look like me. I can support anybody. Same way that like guys, I do pay attention to college football. Actually, I'm sad that the Ducks lost. True story. But I was happy to see something like this kind of story where, hey, you had a couple black head coaches are in the quarterfinals. And now you got a black head coach in the finals. That would be the coach of Notre Dame. And, it's kind of crazy. Like this hasn't happened before, but there just hasn't been that many opportunities because the way hiring practices are, they just don't look at every single candidate. And this is just, you have to use sports as a simple example because we can all see with our own eyes, there are clearly several black players that play football, right? It's not like shocking. And suddenly there's, why wouldn't there be black coaches? Because it's kind of should be a natural progression. If someone's really good, they know the sport really, really well, right? And there's a lot of people who do said thing, there should be more candidates out there. And there are, it just depends, if your organization is open to said candidates. And that's sort of one of the reasons why you'd want a DI type of, entity, is just to encourage looking for other candidates. Doesn't mean you just forcibly hire people who are unqualified. You just open the doors to candidates that may not necessarily be there before. So I'll give you some examples of why you'd want a DI program at your school or at your company. Is maybe if your recruiting pipelines is only through, family connections, which often happens at, the big Wall Street, banks or whatever. And, you want to open up connections for other people's. Now, when people think about DI, though, they only think about certain types of people, right? So I understand how if you're, say, white and you're poor and you're from a rural community, you're like, well, DI stuff doesn't help me and I'm not getting any benefits from, being white. I understand that point of view. I completely get it, right? So that's what I'm saying. I get it. And that's why I point out to the beginning part of like, hiring is not really fair anywhere. But this is something that we have to address as a whole society is classism is very, very real and not everyone has opportunities. And part of what we need to do is figure out a way, how can we open up the doors to more people? And with that said, so, I'll give you an example, another one, and I use sports because you guys can probably understand this one pretty easy. This is actually one of my favorite movies as a kid. It's called Soul of the Game. And I really appreciate this movie because I identified with it. There's very few movies that will tell an Asian American perspective. Very few. Because again, my stories aren't that important to people. That's just how it is. That's why I wrote my book to kind of express the frustration. I used to work in Hollywood as well, so I really know how this stuff works. But in this particular story, which I really like, there's a player called named Josh Gibson, and he never got a chance to play in the majors, and it always sort of affected mentally. That's how they portray it in the movie, and which I completely understand. He was plenty good, right? Just at the time that they weren't looking for people that looked like him. And it's just, I think it's a great story if you haven't seen it already. And then I'll point out to another movie if you guys haven't seen this called Shanghai Calling. And not many people saw this movie. It's a very dinky little tiny indie movie starring Daniel Henney. And actually Bill Paxton's in this movie. He's got a cameo. It's pretty cool though. I like Bill Paxton. And then you'll recognize the one of the dude from Ferris Bueller. But this is an Asian American story, which you won't hear that often. And it's not the best movie in the world. I'll be honest, it's not the best movie, but it tells a story that you don't hear all the time. And the question I'd pose to you is, why not? Why wouldn't a movie like this get to be seen? And it goes back to sort of like the best stories aren't necessarily picked in Hollywood, or the best employees aren't necessarily picked at said companies because they're not looking for certain kinds of people. And you can define that however you want to define that. But point is that hiring practices are usually done through relationships and connections. And it becomes very difficult if you're from a background, right? Be it from the wrong city, be it from the wrong family, be it from the wrong economic thing, to where you don't have the connections in the beginning. It becomes very difficult. And a lot of times that people don't acknowledge fully is that the rich kids, be it Zuckerberg was born rich, he's not poor. Musk is born rich, they're not poor, right? They have opportunities that other people don't. And the way Americans like to think of it is like, oh, well, these rich kids, reach the top of the ladder, of the economic ladder, and therefore they must be more qualified and more hardworking than everyone else. And it's not necessarily the case. It's just not. Even in Zuckerberg's situation, did he really invent Facebook? Who knows? See the Facebook movie if you want, to watch it. Is it called Social Network? I think that's what it's called. But it shows like there were lawsuits back then of like who invented Facebook and stuff like that. And it's a fascinating movie. Or with the Musk situation, people thought he formed Tesla, but it's not true. He came in late to the game, bought his way in, and ended up suing the co-founders, or people think he's a genius, but it's not exactly the case. He made a lot of his money by being part of PayPal, got kicked out of PayPal, and then it became successful. And then he got a bunch of money from that, from other people's work. So that's kind of stuff like that. But, everyone has whatever assumptions that they want to make about certain groups of people. But what I caution you and what I want you to just think about in your mind is that when we think about hiring at any particular company, are we looking at everyone? And are we looking at ways of hiring people outside of just our family connection or friend, network? Unfortunately, though, it's hard to do that. I understand that because there's 10,000 applicants at, every top job or whatever. And so then people just tend to rely on just your personal networks. That's how the world works. And then it also goes back to people have, biases and preferences of who they pick for their friends. I'm not one of those kind of people. I try to be friends with as many people as I possibly can of different types of groups, right? Doesn't mean I want to be friends with everyone, but just, but that comes through experience from having, various cities that I've lived or countries that I've been. Again, I talk about this kind of stuff in my book. And the more you get out in the world, I always say, get a passport. It's not just America. Get a passport. Go visit other places. And you'll realize the world is full of really wonderful people. And that's one thing I always appreciate about having you in our community. We're an international community. You guys may or not know our audience it's about 50% US, but then that means 50% not US. And so we have all sorts of people who are watching the channel. So that's my thoughts on the whole meta thing. I'm sure if I wanted to, I could just address whatever stupid post that Musk is up to today, or whatever stupid thing is people are saying about DEI. But I wanted to address the sort of elephant in the room that hiring is not fair, no matter how you look at it for any person. So that's my thoughts on this. And I'll talk to you all in the next video.